Hello, I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. This series of podcasts is aimed at financial planning professionals and also those who are looking to enter the financial planning profession. We will be talking during the podcast about all things Certified Financial Planner certification related, talking to other CFPs around the world, and also we will be dropping in on some new entrants who've just entered the financial planning profession, and we'll be checking up along the way on a regular basis with them to see how they're getting on. I hope you enjoy today's podcast. Hello and welcome. I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. And on today's podcast, I'm talking to a very special person who passed their CISI Level 7 case study on his very first submission attempt and now has become a certified financial planner in the UK. And that is Greg Cook from Polaris Wealth Management. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you for having me, Jackie.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Now, we are going to delve about in the CFP Level 7 case study in a moment, but tell us a little bit about your more unusual story of how you got into the financial planning profession.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, as you mentioned, it's a slightly more unusual route than I'm guessing a lot of people will take, but I sort of never worked for anybody else. I set up on my own pretty much from day one. My father was a IFA for a long time, so I'm guessing that's where my original interest in the career path came from. I ended up securing a couple of really helpful training programs early doors that piqued my interest in the profession. So while I was at uni, I got onto a thing that was run by Aviva, and it was a future advisor program. I'm guessing they were trying to give a little bit back and get some young blood into the industry. So that was really helpful. Sort of sent me around the country, visiting other businesses and things like that. That was good. And then Sesame helped me with my CII training, and then sort of let me set off as a self-employed advisor day one through one of their AR firms. So without that, I'd have been pretty much having to go and get an employed role or be really brave and jump straight in with both feet as an AR on day one.
And how long ago was all of this that you started your own business?
I did a letter at Christmas for clients, and when I wrote it, I realised I'd been advising for over 10 years.
Wow.
So a while ago, but I think in terms of my own business, it's been about 8 years.
Fantastic. And how did you come across the CFP certification?
I think I've looked at it quite a few times without really committing, and obviously done a bit of reading on it, and it can be quite daunting to see how difficult it can be. So I definitely looked at it a couple of times before I sort of took the plunge, and I booked onto the practice in financial planning case study type of assessment.
That's it. So instead of doing the level 6 exam, you did the professional assessment, that bridge assessment. So you must have been a chartered financial planner with the CII already, and then you did the bridge assessment, did you?
Yes, yeah, exactly that. So I think I signed up for that in about July 22, and then promptly forgot about it and didn't do anything with it till early 2023. I had a good excuse. We were moving home, but it got sat there in the back of the drawer for a while.
Oops. Okay.
And then finally did it in sort of May 23.
And then after that, you went straight on to get the case study?
Yeah, it was pretty much did the assessment just in time to book the case study. I thought if I didn't, it'd go back in the drawer again and wouldn't come out. So I sort of made myself do it.
Excellent. Well done for doing all of that. So what happened when you got your case study? Did you do any preparation before you got your case study in readiness to, for when it hit your inbox?
The preparation was really the assessment, the financial planning assessment. because I did it so close to jumping on it, was like a good refresher.
Okay.
But I didn't do anything specific before the case study arrived, because it was sort of a week or two later.
Right. And so tell us a bit about how you approached the case study from when it landed in your inbox.
Well, yeah, it was quite daunting when it first arrives. The first thing, I made sure I was on your course, because I'd listened to a couple of your podcasts and read a few things about people struggling through it without taking any training. So that was the first bit of prep that I did, making sure I was on there. But yeah, to start off with, it was just reading through the case study multiple times, picking out where you thought the case study was going to go, some of the themes that were in there, and highlighting up a few of the key points. And then it was very much a case of just waiting for the first input from you, so I could get crack on and really start to tackle the case study. But
tell our listeners about what happened along the way when you were on the course.
So Jackie's course, it's really, really, really helpful. So you work through it in stages on your own, and there's study material and explanations about all the various steps, and then you feed back in with Jackie and the rest of the group a couple of times throughout it. So it's like a roadmap. You've got to get to this stage before your next meeting. You've got to get to that stage before your next meeting, and so on. And that really helps keep you focused on moving forward and not going down rabbit holes, which is quite difficult not to do, to be honest.
Everybody does, I think, from time to time. But it's part of the process, I think, isn't it? Actually going down the rabbit holes. The point is not staying down there too long.
Yeah, I was definitely guilty of that, and I think you told me off a few times for that. So, but yeah, you're right. It's really easy to get lost in there, and then sometimes you just need somebody to go, come on, make a decision one way or the other, move on. Otherwise, you're just going to end up stuck down there forever. So I think that was really helpful, getting somebody just to, with fresh eyes and what have you, to just say, you've done that bit now, move on.
Yes. Yeah, you made the decision, and that's part of this whole process, isn't it? Because some people say to me that the case study seems quite straightforward when you initially get it, but there's so much in there, and that when you start to tackle one bit, then you kind of think, oh, maybe I should think about that, or maybe I should do that, and then that's where your rabbit hole goes, and then you're off, aren't you? When you need somebody to kind of pull you back and go, right, well, what decision are you making? And then right, okay, I'm making this decision, and then right, okay, you've made that decision. That's now set in stone, as I know that lots of people were sick of hearing me during the course. So, yes, that's now set in stone. Now, what's the next step after you've made that decision? So it's quite interesting, that kind of iterative process, isn't it? So how did you find, we had some one-to-ones as well together, didn't we? How did you find all of that process?
Yeah, just going back on what you said there about the rabbit holes, the other thing that was really helpful is because your mind is racing, thinking, okay, I've got this problem to deal with, but then that's going to be in the background later down the line. It was also helpful for you to say, right, don't get stuck down that rabbit hole, but stop thinking about the other things, just solve the problem that's in front of you at the moment, and then the rest will come through in time. So that was really helpful. But a big challenge is, it's not really like any other assessment that I've done. And you said that at the start. And obviously, most people have done exams with the CII and what have you. They're a different challenge, because there's a right and a wrong answer all the time. And you generally get the impression that you're moving forward all the time with your studies. The assessment's completely different, because you're second guessing yourself all the time, or at least I was anyway. And having somebody like yourself to just come in and go, okay, just stop deliberating too much on that point and move on and keep you focused, and somebody to bounce the odd idea off when you think, am I just running up the the wrong path here was really, really helpful.
Good. And so what aspects did you enjoy most about dealing with this case study, and where were those, kind of hidden tricky bits for you?
Enjoys it. Strong word. It was kind of, it was, I wouldn't say I enjoyed the process. I think I can see the value in the process and coming out the other side, but it was, don't go into it thinking it's going to be fun and enjoyable. You might find it fun and enjoyable. I certainly didn't.
Yeah.
It was very much a case of, I just want to do this and get it done, and take value from the learning rather than the actual enjoyment of working through the case study. It was, it's not well, at least I didn't find it a particularly enjoyable experience.
It's not fun.
No. And you definitely need to think that through before you do it, because it's time consuming and it is hard. And I mean, we've all got lives outside of it and clients and all that kind of stuff. So you need to be 100% eyes open before you go in.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you find, because I know that you love an Excel spreadsheet, don't you? So was that one of the aspects that you found more straightforward? Because lots of people do struggle with that aspect, don't they?
I find myself, I think I'm quite decent at Excel and my skills are okay there. But it's still challenging, just because of the sheer volume of data that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And how interlinked it all is. My particular case study made the Excel bit more difficult, I felt, because it was multiple portfolios, different people, and it kind of meant some of the goal seek stuff didn't work, and you ended up going around in circles and having to do manual data entry just to make the spreadsheets work a few times. So that was quite challenging. More from it just ate up loads of time. It wasn't particularly difficult, just ate up loads of time, and then it's keeping track of it. Whenever you make a tiny amendment, you've got to then think, oh God, I've got to mess about with all these cells that I've put manual data in. So that was definitely a challenge. If you're not comfortable with Excel, that's definitely somewhere where you want to just brush up on a few skills beforehand.
Yes, absolutely. And then, Excel aside, how did you find rabbit holes aside, how did you find the kind of thought process of working your way through the case study? Did you find that, comparing that to your own natural skills, that some aspects of the case study were more tricky than others, like perhaps for estate planning or retirement planning, one bit slightly easier, I guess, because you're more familiar, and some bits, were there complexities that popped up that you hadn't really considered before?
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote down in my notes before today's podcast that my case study almost felt like a sadistic joke at times, from my point of view, because it was completely on the boundaries of the comfort level from my point of view. I've got a relatively young client bank, so albeit I do deal with estate issues, they are sort of few and far between, and there was implications with long-term care which had never come about. There was even family planning for children. It was a second marriage and planning a second family, and I don't have kids, so that was a little bit difficult from my point of view to get my head into that sort of stuff. But it was a challenging case study, but looking back on it now compared to at the time, it was probably the perfect case study from a learning perspective. It was a real eye opener from my point of view.
And that's because it forced you to take on all, obviously you've got 4 completely conflicting objectives as well, but also, forcing you to think through those ramifications of every time you make a recommendation in one area, the, maybe unintended consequences or knock-on effects in another area, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's easy to focus on one thing and just forget about some of the other things, but everything obviously is interconnected. And it was definitely a good challenge from my point of view, the case study, compared to some of the others that I obviously heard you talk about, and saw from other people's point of view. You do sit there thinking, I wish I'd got that case study, but then, like you say, in the long run, it's probably the one I did.
Better. Yeah. He's got the kitchen sink in that case study that you had, I think. They threw everything at that one for you. Well, not for you personally, but obviously for everybody who got that case study.
Yeah, it was a lot. There was a lot going on.
Yeah.
It wasn't all just all in the same areas, like you say. It was, it's probably as wide a spread of knowledge required as you could possibly need.
Wow, yeah. So, how long, looking back now, do you think it took you to complete your submission?
I was trying to work this out earlier today. It's quite difficult to put into hours. But what I can say is I pretty much gave it every weekend I had, bar one, where I was on a friend's stag do in Amsterdam.
Okay, that's allowed.
But having said that, I was still typing away on submission day, which I know you said not to do. And I still found myself wishing I had that extra weekend, which I feel a bit guilty for because my friend's stag do was really good. But it was still a struggle on the day to finally say goodbye to it and submit it.
Yeah. So, definitely in excess of 100 hours, maybe up towards the 200-hour mark, I would think, by the sounds of it.
Easy, yeah. And I found it quite hard to dip in and out of as well. So because of the Excel stuff, you kind of had to spend half an hour getting your head back into it before you could actually start doing any work. So dipping in and out for an hour in a day was really difficult. I pretty much did most of the case study in the weekend, bar the odd bits that I did sort of after the phone stopped ringing on odd days. But as I say, you'd spend an hour just getting yourself back up to speed, and then before you know it, it's dinner and winding down. So the weekends are definitely needed.
And I think that's one of the most important things to get across to people is depending on how you like to work. I was speaking to somebody earlier today and they said to me they did their case study for 2 hours every morning as soon as they got up. And everybody's different, aren't they? So you've got to know and understand your own method of working. And if you want to take the whole of Saturday or whatever it is, to immerse yourself in it and you make more forward progress, then you've got to run with that, haven't you? Rather than going, right, I'm going to do an hour every night, when you're exhausted and when you've had a full day of, client meetings and writing reports.
Yeah, absolutely. That wouldn't have worked for me. I'm not a morning person, so definitely wouldn't have worked for me. But as you say, I needed more time in each go, if you like, to devote to it.
And you passed on your very first submission. So many congratulations for doing that. That is no mean feat, absolutely.
Thank you.
It's a huge thing to do and testament to your determination and conviction to become a certified financial planner. So many congratulations on all of that. Looking back now, how do you think, has it challenged the way your thought process is now for your business, for the clients, and for advice that you give to those clients moving forward, do you think?
Yeah, it definitely has. It definitely has. I sort of, whether by accident or by design, sort of fell into the more traditional IFA role when I first started advising, maybe out of necessity to go and earn some money and all that kind of stuff. And but I did obviously start off doing mortgages and protection before I eventually moved into financial advice and planning. So maybe it's on the back of that. So it's definitely made me start to approach it in a completely different way with clients and almost reassess the value where I add the value for the client, as opposed to being technical expert problem solver. It's a bit more of a getting the client to see the aha moment or whatever, and put a plan in place for the future.
Yes. And also, do you think that, you mentioned earlier that you've got, quite a young client bank. Do you think that, going through the CFP and having this experience has actually helped you help them understand what financial planning is all about and maybe help them plan for their future a little bit better than perhaps you otherwise would have done?
Yeah, absolutely. It's for a lot of advisors, one of the first times they start messing about with cash flow systems is when they're dealing with a retirement client. Whether that's right or wrong is anybody's decision, but sitting down and actually planning the accumulation and lifetime cash flow plan is a completely different journey for the client. So yeah, absolutely, definitely helps in that respect.
Yeah, indeed. And so you not only embarking on the CFP last year, but you also did some other courses, didn't you? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've sort of like to push myself. For some reason, I think I've got loads of time and try and make myself do lots of things that I don't actually have time for. So CFP being one of them, but yeah, pretty much straight on the back of it, I booked onto a coaching course with another financial planner. Yeah, that's been, it runs every quarter and I've been 3 times now. So it was helpful for the actual CFP because not only did I have obviously your assistance and the course, but there was somebody else I could bounce ideas off if I was struggling, which was also a help. But then from a business perspective, it's because I've always done everything on my own. I've always been on my own. I've not really had that guide, that sort of learning a way of doing things with an employer that some other advisors might have had. So it's been really helpful in that respect.
Yes. And I think we've said before that I remember Paul Etheridge, who started the Institute of Financial Planning back in 1986, or the late Paul Etheridge, I say, sadly passed away in 2022. He used to say to me that so many people were professionally lonely out there giving advice. And I used to kind of pull a face at him. And he was like, well, so many people are working on their own, or, perhaps 1 or 2 people working together, or a financial planner and administrator. And you just don't have, unless you make that effort, you don't always have that network of people, do you, that you can go along and bounce ideas off. So it's good. It's great to hear that you are building that network of people, and people like me that you can never really get rid of, even if you wanted to, that, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. Obviously, yeah, one-man band for 10 odd years, you are on your own quite a lot of the time, and you don't have that sort of second person in the office to bounce an idea off. So it is handy to make these connections. I did make some decent connections early doors through those 2 courses that I mentioned, the financial advisor school and things like that. But yeah, it is really helpful and reassuring almost that the doubts that I have when I'm giving advice are sometimes similar to the doubts that somebody else that's been doing it 30 odd years might be having a similar sort of doubt in their mind and want to just double check that they're on the right mindset with things. And that was really reassuring.
Yeah. And so moving forward in your business now you have gained your CFP, I guess you can find other CFPs, perhaps in your local area, or go to branch meetings. And there are obviously CFP only events, I think, that the CISI runs too. So what plans do you have for the future to help build that network, perhaps of other CFP professionals?
I've been trying to twist my friend's arm to do the exam, but he's to do the case study, but he's been put off by my amount of hours that it took and how difficult I said it was. But I'll keep trying with him. But yeah, I've booked onto a few conferences, which is something I've not done before now. Certainly not CISI conferences and planning focused conferences. I've not done that sort of thing before. So yeah, I've booked onto a few of those. obviously doing the coaching course. There's a few of us doing it, so I'm meeting people through that, and it's definitely something I need to push myself to do, to go and meet other advisors, because as you say, it can be a little bit lonely from a professional point of view.
Yeah, and I think also everybody's got a different personality. You're like me, you love an Excel spreadsheet. But sometimes it can, because you're so busy anyway, and you're trying to build all these new skills, gaining your CFP and the coaching and everything else to help basically grow your business, but also, by doing that, you're helping all of your clients and offering them perhaps more comprehensive service than perhaps you were before. But I think it's, sometimes I always think it's quite hard work. You've got to kind of put yourself out there, haven't you, and go along, force yourself sometimes to go along to these meetings, because actually that you're going to get so much more out of it when you get there. And don't forget to go, when you go to the conference, with a pocket of business cards to make sure that you can swap business cards with the people and other CFP professionals that you find there too. But it can be, even getting out and getting into that habit of building new relationships can be, quite tough, can't it?
Yeah, I think to be honest with you, the main reason I've never done this sort of getting out to conferences and things is when I first started advising, obviously, unless you know about these things, you don't look them up. It's the sorts of invites you get are usually product providers trying to sell you something so you can go and sell it on to clients. So quite quickly, I've turned myself off to that sort of stuff. And the other side of it is, like you say, you're always so busy and focused on clients. It's almost hard to justify a day out of the business and a load of expense versus a day in the business and finding a new client. But obviously, there's other values to be had. If you go into the right events.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to look forward to seeing you at the conference, hopefully, the CISI Financial Planning Conference. I shall be there this year, all things being well. So we are nearly at the end of our time together today, Greg. You have shared so many great insights into your journey. Congratulations on passing your very first submission again. But before we go, I would like to ask you to give some tips and any advice that you have for people who are thinking of embarking on the CFP process themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Do a course. I would definitely recommend doing a training course, preferably Jackie's. I promise she's not bribed me to say that. It was really helpful, and I would have been lost without it. You'd just be struggling to find your way through the assessment without some sort of support, unless you've got it from colleagues that have already done it or something like that. And to be honest, I think it'd be a much harder process, and you'd probably end up spending as much money on resubmissions or lost time if you didn't do a course. So I would definitely recommend, if you were considering it, to take on a course. Brush up on your Excel skills if you're not confident. That's quite important. Plan your time really wisely, because you'll probably need all of it and want more. So if you're employed, ask your employer for study days, block time out if you can, that sort of stuff. And like I said earlier, I found it hard to drop in and out of, so you might be better at that than me, but I tended to need bigger chunks. So if you're a bit like that, make sure you've got plenty of big chunks of time to work on it. And then a few other tips from another advisor that I got was keep it as simple as you absolutely can, especially when it comes to the report. The assessor doesn't really care about your technical knowledge. They're more interested in the actual financial plan, and remember, the report is for a client, not really for the assessor. And then, probably the biggest one, cost absolutely everything. Keep a budget for your income and your capital. Track them both as you spend them, so you don't spend a pound twice, because that can be a quick way to mess things up.
Indeed. Indeed. I have marked in my time probably 1,000 level 7 equivalent financial plans, and the number of times that people have spent the same money 2 or 3 times, I will be forever etched in my memory. So great advice there. Greg, thanks very much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
No problem at all. My pleasure as well.
It's really interesting, isn't it, to listen to different people who have different experiences of gaining their certified financial planner certification, or maybe developing the financial planning profession at large. If you know anybody who you think might be interested in listening to any of these podcasts, then please do pass on our details. That's it for me. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. See you again soon. Bye for now.